In the smoke-filled ruins of New Shanghai, elite warrior Zarthak watches in horror as his crystalline body crumbles, the sound of his own exoskeleton crackling, like breaking ice echoes through the abandoned streets where hours ago he had led the fearsome Crystal Battalion against human defenders. His once magnificent form, a testament to 10 generations of selective breeding, now lies shattered in a crater made by human artillery fire. The pain sensors throughout his crystalline matrix flash, desperately sending signals of system failure as microscopic fractures spread across his transparent outer shell like spider webs in the dying light. He can still see the battlefield through his prismatic vision, watching as his own unit marches away, their perfect crystal forms catching the light of the setting sun in a display that once filled him with pride, but now only brings despair. Zarthak tries to move, but his neural network misfires, sending cascading patterns of light through his damaged crystals instead of the fluid motion he had perfected over 3 centuries of combat. The proud warrior, who had personally led the conquest of 7 human colonies, can only watch as error messages flood his consciousness, his internal repair systems failing one by one as the damage proves too severe. The carrion birds of Earth circle overhead, their shadows passing over his broken form. These creatures seem to understand his fate better than his own species, their primitive instincts recognizing easy prey, while his supposedly advanced civilization marches on without a backward glance, leaving him to contemplate the irony of his situation, the very strength he had prided himself on now proving meaningless in his moment of weakness. Through his fractured vision, he observes the ruins of the human city, noting with bitter appreciation how even their primitive concrete and steel structures show signs of attempted repairs and reinforcement. Unlike his people's practice of discarding anything damaged, the humans seem to value preservation and restoration, a concept he had always dismissed as weakness until this moment. His internal chronometer, still functioning, counts down what he assumes will be his final hours as a warrior who has never known defeat. Zarthak finds himself experiencing fear for the first time since emerging from the crystal forges of his homeworld, the sensation alien and overwhelming in its intensity as he realizes that death might not be the worst fate possible. The background radiation from the recent battle interacts with his damaged crystal matrix, creating haunting displays of color that dance across his shattered form like aurora borealis, each pulse a reminder of his failing systems. The beautiful light shows a stark contrast to the grim reality of his situation as he lies helpless in the crater that has become both his prison and likely his tomb. Memory crystals in his core still function, replaying moments from his long life of combat and conquest. He sees again the faces of countless enemies he had defeated, the worlds he had helped claim for the Kryaxian Empire, and for the first time he questions the wisdom of their ways, wondering if their relentless pursuit of perfection through abandonment has cost them something fundamental that the humans, despite their biological frailty, seem to possess. As night approaches, the temperature drops, causing more stress fractures to appear in his weathered crystal surface, each crack sending new waves of agony through his consciousness. The proud warrior, who once commanded legions, now unable to even shift his position to avoid the growing discomfort of his situation, while in the distance he can hear the sounds of battle continuing without him. The stars begin to appear in the sky above New Shanghai, their light refracting through his damaged crystal form, creating prisms on the ground around him, in what feels like a cruel reminder of his people's obsession with perfection and purity. He had always believed that strength came from eliminating weakness, but lying here watching his own people abandon him, while even earth insects show more concern by investigating his broken form, he begins to wonder if perhaps his species' understanding of strength has been fundamentally flawed all along. Private Sarah Chen moves silently through the ruins of New Shanghai, her radiation detector pulsing with a soft blue glow that illuminates the darkness around her. Unlike the other members of the 47th Earth Defense Force who chose to patrol the safer established routes, she deliberately ventures into the hot zones where the heaviest fighting had occurred, believing that these were the places where she was most needed. The detector in her hand suddenly spikes its reading, going wild with an unfamiliar signature that makes her pause and adjust the settings. She has seen every kind of radiation pattern that modern warfare can produce. But this one is different, almost like a crystalline lattice breaking down at the quantum level, her scientific curiosity overtaking her military training. She moves closer to investigate the source. Through her tactical visor, she spots a fallen Cryaxian warrior in the crater, his once magnificent crystal form, now fractured and dim in the moonlight. She recognizes him immediately as one of their elite warriors, the kind that human soldiers tell horror stories about around their campfires. But instead of the terrifying figure from those tales, she sees something else entirely, a conscious being trapped in its own broken body. Sarah checks her surroundings, securing the perimeter before approaching closer. Her grandfather's words echo in her mind from years ago when he had treated enemy soldiers during the Southeast Asian conflicts. His belief that a medic's duty was to life itself, not to any one side in a war. She remembers how those saved enemies often became the strongest advocates for peace in their own lands. Moving down into the crater, her boots crunching on crystalline fragments, she notices how the alien's internal lights still pulse, albeit weakly, indicating consciousness. Despite the catastrophic damage to its external structure, her handheld medical scanner confirms what her eyes tell her. The Cryaxian is fully aware of its surroundings, but completely unable to move, trapped in a prison of its own crystalline biology. The rational part of her mind screams that she should walk away, or better yet, end the warrior's suffering with a clean plasma shot. After all, this single Cryaxian had probably killed hundreds of humans. But Sarah sees something in those still glowing eyes that transcends species and warfare, a fundamental will to live that speaks to her own humanity. She kneels beside the fallen warrior, her medical kit already in her hands, as she begins scanning the complex crystalline structure that makes up their biology, her neural tablet, translating the alien physiology into something she can understand. She knows that helping an enemy combatant is against regulations, but Sarah has never been one to let rules stand in the way of doing what she feels is right. As she works, her helmet picks up chatter from her squad about movement in her sector, but she doesn't respond. Instead, focusing on understanding the incredible complexity of Cryaxian neural pathways, she realizes that their bodies are like living fiber optic networks, and begins to wonder if human medical technology, specifically their advanced nerve repair techniques, might be adapted to help. The fallen warrior watches her every movement, its crystalline eyes tracking her with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. She can sense its bewilderment at her actions, knowing from her xenobiology training that Cryaxian culture considers helping the wounded to be not just forbidden, but a sign of species weakness. The warrior must be struggling to comprehend why she would risk helping an enemy. Sarah makes a decision that she knows will change both their lives. Reaching into her medkit, she pulls out a vial of experimental nanogel designed for repairing severed human nerve tissue. Theoretically, if she can modify the nanites to work with the Cryaxian's crystalline structure, she might be able to at least restore some neural function. It's a long shot, but Sarah has always believed that the biggest breakthroughs come from taking the biggest risks. Working beneath the shadow of a crashed Cryaxian dropship, whose crystalline hull still emanates a faint purple glow, Sarah begins the delicate process of understanding the alien warrior's neural network. She discovers that treating the complex crystalline pathways requires her to completely rethink everything she knows about medicine, while defending their position from the Saiga wolves that now prowl the ruins of New Shanghai, attracted by the unique energy signature of the damaged Cryaxian. Zarthak watches in fascination as the human medic combines knowledge from her neural tablet with improvised tools from her kit, a practice that would be considered heretical among his own people who believe that knowledge should only be passed through perfect crystalline transmission. He observes how she adapts and experiments, learning from each failure rather than abandoning the effort as his species would demand. The first breakthrough comes when Sarah realizes that the Kriaxian neural network operates on principles similar to quantum computing. Rather than simple binary signals, she modifies her nanogel using her tablet's processing power to calculate new configurations that might be compatible with crystalline biology, each attempt bringing them closer to success, while overhead the sounds of continuing battle remind them both of the war they are choosing to ignore. As Sarah works, she begins to share stories from human history, speaking aloud, both to keep herself focused and to give Zarthak something to focus on besides his condition. She tells him about the Chilean mining disaster where an entire nation worked for months to save 33 trapped miners, about the Thigh Cave rescue that united the world in saving young soccer players, and about countless other moments where humans chose to fight death itself rather than abandon those in need. Through their newly established light pulse communication systems, Zarthak shares his own revelations about his species' development. He explains how their crystalline biology evolved under the harsh radiation of binary stars, forcing them to prioritize perfection and structural integrity above all else. Yet, as he watches Sarah work, he begins to question whether their response to that evolutionary pressure might have led them down a path that ultimately limited their potential. The cyberwolves grow bolder as the night deepens their cybernetic augmentations. Glowing red in the darkness, Sarah alternates between working on Zarthak and firing warning shots at the approaching predators. She realizes that their situation mirrors the very principle she is trying to explain to him about strength through cooperation, as she alone would likely have already fallen to the pack, while he would have been helpless against them. More fascinating to Zarthak than the medical procedure itself is watching how Sarah learns and adapts with each failure. Instead of executing a perfect predetermined plan, she makes mistakes, analyzes them, and improves her approach. This iterative process, so foreign to his crystalline mind, trained to execute only perfect actions, begins to show him an entirely new way of understanding progress and development. A particularly aggressive cyberwolf manages to breach their perimeter, forcing Sarah to engage in close combat. She drives it back using her plasma rifle as a club, while simultaneously keeping her medical equipment. Safely positioned, the whole scene causes Zarthak to experience an emotion he has never felt before as he watches a being risk their life to protect someone their society would consider an enemy. Through their growing ability to communicate, Sarah learns that Kriaxian society has no concept of hospitals or medical research. Their entire approach to injury and illness focused on isolation and replacement rather than repair and healing. She begins to understand that she is not just treating a single injured warrior, but potentially challenging the fundamental beliefs of an entire civilization. Under the glow of emergency flares, Sarah works to enhance their communication system, adapting a damaged Kriaxian communication crystal with her own military comms unit to create a more efficient way of exchanging information. She discovers that by routing signals through the still-functioning portions of Zarthak's neural network, they can achieve a crude but effective form of direct communication that transcends the usual barriers between their species. As their ability to communicate improves, Zarthak shares the devastating truth about his people's approach to weakness, explaining how Kriaxian society developed its harsh practices during the early days of their civilization. When resources were scarce and radiation levels deadly, they began leaving behind anyone who showed signs of imperfection, believing that only by maintaining the strongest genetic lines could their species survive the hostile conditions of their binary star system. Sarah listens while continuing her work, using the improved communication to better understand Kriaxian physiology. She shares her own species' history of survival, explaining how humans faced their own extinction-level events, but chose a different path. Instead of abandoning their wounded and weak, they developed medicine and technology, specifically to protect their most vulnerable members, leading to innovations that eventually made their entire species stronger. Through their neural link, Zarthak experiences fragments of human history, watching in astonishment as Sarah shows him scenes from Earth's past where entire communities rallied to save single lives, the concept so alien to his crystalline mind that at first he believes the images must be some form of propaganda, but the depth of emotion and detail in the memories proves their authenticity. A particularly powerful moment comes when Sarah shares the memory of her grandfather, a combat medic, who once spent 18 hours treating wounded soldiers from both sides during a brutal conflict. She shows Zarthak how this act of compassion led to a ceasefire in that region as the treated enemy soldiers refused to fight against the people who had saved their lives. This story resonates deeply with the crystalline warrior, causing his neural patterns to pulse with new understanding. Their conversation is interrupted by the approach of more cyber wolves, this time accompanied by the distinct sound of corrupted combat drones. Sarah positions herself to defend their location while simultaneously maintaining the delicate medical equipment she has arranged around Zarthak. The warrior watches as she demonstrates in real time how protecting others does not make humans weak, but rather gives them a strength that comes from fighting for something beyond themselves. Between waves of attacks, Sarah explains how human medical science evolved from prehistoric humans, setting broken bones in caves to modern regenerative technologies. She helps Zarthak understand that each advancement came not from abandoning the injured, but from refusing to accept defeat when faced with injury or illness. This persistence, she argues, is what truly drives species evolution, not the ruthless elimination of the weak. The night grows deeper as they continue their exchange of knowledge, Sarah discovering that Cryaxian crystal technology holds incredible potential for medical applications, while Zarthak learns that what his people had dismissed as human weakness, their adaptability and willingness to learn from failure, might actually be their greatest strength. As dawn approaches, their improved communication allows Zarthak to share the complex equations and theories behind Cryaxian crystal engineering, while Sarah explains the principles of human neural repair, the synthesis of their knowledge, leading to new possibilities that neither species had considered before. Their forced collaboration begins to reveal how the strengths of both species might work together to create something entirely new. The ominous hum of Cryaxian energy weapons fills the air as a death squad materializes at the crater's edge, their crystalline forms casting prismatic shadows. In the early morning light, each warrior stands over 3 meters tall, their bodies engineered for perfect combat efficiency. The squad leader, Krivak, steps forward, his crystal core pulsing with deadly intent as he recognizes the fallen form of Zarthak, once his battle brother, now deemed unworthy of existence. Sarah stands her ground between the death squad and her patient, her medical kit still open beside Zarthak's partially repaired form, her hands steady as she holds nothing more threatening than a neural scanner. The squad watches in confusion as this small human female shows no fear in the face of warriors who have decimated entire platoons, their programming struggling to comprehend her apparent lack of survival instinct. Instead of attacking, Sarah begins to explain her discoveries about Cryaxian biology, speaking in clear, measured tones, while her medical hologram displays the intricate crystal lattices she has been studying. She shows them how their practice of abandoning the injured has prevented them from discovering their species' true potential for regeneration and adaptation, pointing out how their rigid adherence to perfection has actually limited their evolution. Krivak moves closer, his weapons still humming, but his crystal eyes fixed on the medical displays that show successful nerve repairs in Zarthak's damaged systems. Sarah demonstrates how human medical techniques modified for crystalline biology have achieved what Cryaxian science had deemed impossible: the reconstruction of damaged neural pathways within their crystal matrix. The death squad watches in stunned silence as Sarah activates a small section of restored neural network in Zarthak's arm, causing it to move smoothly for the first time since his injury. The impossible sight of damaged crystal healing and regenerating causes several younger warriors to step forward, their own crystal cores pulsing with unprecedented patterns of light that reflect their growing uncertainty about their species' most fundamental beliefs. Sarah seizes this moment of confusion to challenge their understanding of strength. She shows them battle data comparing the survival rates of human and Cryaxian forces, explaining how human medical evacuation and treatment protocols have actually resulted in more experienced warriors returning to combat, while Cryaxian forces constantly lose valuable experience and knowledge by abandoning their injured. Through their newly established communication network, Zarthak adds his own voice to Sarah's defense, sharing his transformed understanding of strength and weakness. He describes how watching Sarah defend him, while simultaneously working to heal him, revealed a form of power his species had never considered: the ability to protect and restore, rather than simply destroy. The squad leader, Krivax, finds himself faced with a decision that could reshape his species' future. As he processes the evidence before him, his crystalline mind calculating possibilities that had never been considered in millennia of Kriaxian evolution. The sight of his former commander, partially healed by primitive human medicine, challenges everything he has ever known about strength and survival. In a moment that will be recorded in both human and Kriaxian histories, Krivax lowers his weapon and approaches Sarah, requesting to understand the medical techniques she has developed. Other members of the Death Squad follow their leader's example, their weapons powering down as curiosity overcomes their programming. For the first time in their species' history, Kriaxian warriors gather not to destroy weakness, but to learn how to heal it. The news of Sarah's breakthrough spreads through the Kriaxian fleet like a quantum cascade, their crystalline communication networks lighting up with unprecedented patterns as warriors at every level begin processing the implications of what she has achieved aboard the massive crystal dreadnought Eternal Perfection. The Kriaxian High Command watches in disbelief as video feeds show their supposedly primitive enemy successfully repairing damage they had always considered irreversible. Young crystal warriors, particularly those from the newer generation, begin secretly establishing contact with human medical units across the battlefront, sharing information about their biology that has been forbidden for millennia, their natural curiosity overwhelming centuries of conditioning. As they witness the possibility of a new path forward for their species, Sarah finds herself at the center of an underground revolution, her improvised medical bay becoming a sanctuary for injured Kriaxians who dare to challenge their society's oldest laws. Working tirelessly, Sarah combines her growing understanding of Kriaxian crystal technology with human medical principles, creating an entirely new field of xenomedicine. She discovers that the very properties that make their crystalline bodies perfect for warfare also hold incredible potential for healing. Their ability to channel and focus energy could be used to accelerate recovery and enhance regeneration in ways that neither species had imagined possible. The Kriaxian scientists who had dedicated their lives to perfecting crystal growth for warfare now turn their attention to medical applications that have vast knowledge of crystal engineering, finding new purpose in healing. Rather than destruction, they begin to see how their obsession with eliminating imperfection had blinded them to the potential benefits of adaptation and repair. Throughout their ship's research labs that once developed weapons are quietly converted to study regenerative crystal technologies. Zarthak, now partially mobile thanks to Sarah's continued treatments, becomes the first Kriaxian to officially document the benefits of medical intervention, his neural networks recording detailed data about the healing process, data that directly contradicts thousands of years of Kriaxian military doctrine. The warrior who once led armies in conquest now leads his people toward a different kind of revolution. Deep within the crystal ships, younger warriors gather in secret, sharing stories of human medical achievements that had once been dismissed as signs of weakness. They begin to question why their species chose extinction over adaptation for injured warriors, wondering how many brilliant minds and experienced leaders they had lost to their rigid beliefs about perfection. Some even start learning basic human medical techniques, studying in hidden corners between battles. Sarah works to formalize her discoveries, creating detailed protocols that bridge the gap between human and Kriaxian biology. She finds that the crystalline nature of their bodies actually makes certain types of repairs more efficient than in human tissue. Once properly understood, their neural networks can be reprogrammed and regenerated with remarkable precision. The key was simply being willing to try something their society had forbidden. The medical revolution begins to affect Kriaxian combat tactics, as well. Warriors no longer rush to abandon their injured comrades, instead calling for human medical assistance. When possible, this subtle shift in battlefield behavior causes ripples throughout both military hierarchies, as commanders on both sides witness unprecedented scenes of cooperation between species that were supposed to be mortal enemies. High in orbit aboard the Eternal Perfection, the Cryaxian Supreme Commander receives reports of increasing numbers of warriors studying human medical texts and practicing basic healing techniques. Instead of immediately crushing this rebellion as tradition would demand, he finds himself watching video feeds of injured warriors returning to duty stronger than before their crystal bodies, bearing the marks of healing like badges of honor that challenge everything their society was built upon. Underground networks begin forming across both sides of the conflict, with encrypted quantum channels carrying medical knowledge between human and Cryaxian forces. Sarah and Zarthak become legendary figures, their stories spreading through neural networks and military communications channels, inspiring a movement that transforms the very nature of the war itself. Young crystal warriors, who once fought with mindless devotion to perfection, now pause to consider the value of preservation and healing. In hidden bunkers beneath the battlefields, human medics work alongside progressive Cryaxian warriors, developing new techniques that combine the best of both species' knowledge. The Cryaxians discover that their ability to channel energy through crystal matrices can enhance human medical technologies, while human adaptability and creativity help unlock healing potential that had always existed within Cryaxian biology, but had been suppressed by their rigid cultural beliefs. The movement gains momentum as successful cases multiply across the front lines. Injured warriors returning to their units tell stories of human compassion and ingenuity that contradict generations of propaganda about human weakness. These veterans, many bearing the distinctive marks of healed crystal structures, become living testimony to the possibility of change. Their very existence, challenging the foundation of Cryaxian military doctrine. Pressure builds within the Cryaxian High Command as more warriors openly question the wisdom of discarding their injured. The younger generation, particularly those who have witnessed or experienced healing firsthand, begin refusing to abandon fallen comrades, creating a crisis of authority that threatens the entire chain of command. Some units even begin incorporating human-style medical equipment into their standard gear, a direct violation of traditional combat protocols. Sarah and Zarthak work tirelessly to document and share their findings, creating a comprehensive database of successful treatments that proves the effectiveness of their revolutionary approach. Their data shows that units adopting the new medical protocols maintain higher combat effectiveness and retain valuable experience that would have been lost under the old system. This evidence becomes impossible for even the most conservative commanders to ignore. The resistance faces fierce opposition from traditional Cryaxian leadership, who see these changes as a threat to their species. Purity militant traditionalists launch attacks against medical facilities and attempt to execute healed warriors, claiming they are tainted by human influence. But each act of aggression only serves to highlight the barbaric nature of their old ways, driving more warriors to question their loyalty to a system that demands the death of their battle brothers. In a pivotal moment, a group of healed warriors presents themselves before the Cryaxian Council, their restored crystal bodies, bearing the marks of their injuries like medals of honor. They demonstrate how the integration of human medical knowledge has made them stronger, more adaptable, and more effective in combat. Their testimony, supported by combat performance data that cannot be dismissed, forces the Council to confront the possibility that their entire understanding of strength has been flawed. The human military command watches these developments with mixed reactions. While some generals see the potential for peace, others fear that helping the Cryaxians heal will only make them stronger opponents. But the movement has gained too much momentum to stop. Medical knowledge continues to flow across battle lines through unofficial channels as more soldiers on both sides choose to follow their conscience rather than their orders. The turning point comes when the massive Cryaxian dreadnought Crystal Dominion suffers catastrophic damage during a battle near Earth's lunar colonies, its crystalline superstructure fractured by a series of antimatter detonations. Rather than following the ancient protocol of mass crystalline shattering where damaged ships and crew destroy themselves to prevent showing weakness, the young captain makes an unprecedented decision to accept human assistance. The sight of human rescue vessels approaching the wounded dreadnought becomes an iconic image broadcast across both fleets as emergency teams in radiation suits work alongside Kryaxian engineers to stabilize a ship's failing crystal matrix. The human rescuers discover that their experience repairing space station damage translates surprisingly well to treating the living crystal structures of Kryaxian vessels, while the Kryaxians find that their ability to channel energy through crystals can enhance human repair technologies. Inside the damaged dreadnought, human medical teams set up emergency treatment centers, working with Kryaxian warriors who have secretly studied Sarah's medical protocols. The ship's massive crystal corridors fill with the combined light of human medical equipment and Kryaxian healing energies, as both species work together to save over 3,000 crew members who would have been sacrificed under traditional law. The rescue operation becomes a testing ground for all the medical innovations developed since Sarah first helped Zarthak. Human doctors and Kryaxian crystal technicians collaborate to save critically injured warriors, discovering new techniques that neither species could have developed alone. The success rate proves so high that even the most hardline traditional commanders cannot deny the effectiveness of cooperation. News of the rescue spreads rapidly through both fleets, transmitted through official channels and personal communications networks. Warriors across the Kryaxian Armada watch in amazement as their injured comrades receive treatment and return to duty bearing proud marks of healing that would once have been considered signs of shame. The very concept of strength begins to shift as they witness the power of preservation over destruction. The human fleet responds to this change with their own transformation as medical ships, once held far behind battle lines, move forward to support both human and Kryaxian forces. Engineering teams begin developing hybrid technologies that combine human medical equipment with Kryaxian crystal enhancement, creating new possibilities for healing and repair that benefit both species. Support for the old ways crumbles as more Kryaxian ships begin requesting human medical assistance when damaged, the practice spreading so quickly that it overwhelms the efforts of traditionalist commanders to stop it. Younger warriors, particularly those who have witnessed the benefits of healing firsthand, openly challenge the logic of sacrificing experienced crew members when restoration is possible. High above Earth, the Crystal Dominion becomes a symbol of change. Its restored form, bearing the marks of human assistance like badges of honor, rather than shame. The ship's captain, previously considered a traitor for accepting help, becomes a hero to the new generation of warriors who see in his decision the path to their species' true evolution. The peace treaty signing ceremony takes place in the transformed crater where Sarah first found Zarthak, now a sprawling memorial garden where crystal flowers engineered through combined human and Kryaxian biotechnology bloom in impossible colors, their petals capturing and refracting sunlight in patterns that symbolize the harmony between organic and crystalline life. The garden itself stands as living proof that beauty can emerge from the wounds of war. Zarthak, now fully recovered and standing prouder than ever before, presents his transformed form to the assembled delegates, his crystal body bearing the elegant marks of healing that have become the new standard of Kryaxian beauty. Where once they sought perfection through flawlessness, they now celebrate the complex patterns that come from overcoming damage and emerging stronger. The warrior, who was meant to die in obscurity, has instead become the face of a revolution. Sarah Chen steps forward to receive the highest honors of both species, her simple medical kit, now preserved in a crystal display case, as a reminder of how the smallest acts of compassion can change the course of history. She has been appointed to lead the newly established Interspecies Medical Academy, where human and Kryaxian medical knowledge will be combined to push the boundaries of healing beyond what either species thought possible. The academy itself represents a fusion of both cultures, its crystal spires incorporating human design elements to create spaces where organic and crystalline life can thrive together. Research laboratories equipped with hybrid technology developed during the rescue of the Crystal Dominion stand ready to train a new generation of healers who will serve both species without distinction or prejudice. former enemies, now work side by side in the academy halls human doctors, learning to channel energy through crystal matrices, while Cryaxian warriors study the adaptability and creativity that they once dismissed as weakness. Together, they discover that their combined knowledge opens possibilities that neither species could have achieved alone, leading to breakthroughs in medicine, technology, and understanding. The garden surrounding the academy blooms with crystal flowers whose genetic structure has been modified to produce healing resonances, their vibrations helping to repair both organic tissue and crystalline matrices. This living symbol of cooperation stands as proof that destruction need not be the path to strength, and that true power comes from the ability to preserve and protect rather than simply destroy. Throughout the ceremony, Cryaxian warriors demonstrate their transformed combat doctrine, no longer seeking merely to destroy. They now incorporate protective and healing techniques into their fighting style, their crystal bodies, channeling energy, not just for weapons, but for shields and restoration, the very nature of their species' strength redefined by their willingness to embrace change. The highest moment comes when a group of young crystal warriors who bear healed battle scars perform the newly created dance of restoration, their movements telling the story of how humanity taught them to value healing over destruction. As they dance, their crystal bodies pulse with light patterns that match the rhythm of human heartbeats, a symbolic demonstration of how two species once locked in war found harmony in their differences. As the ceremony concludes, Sarai and Zarthak stand together at the gardens center, their unlikely friendship having sparked a transformation that will echo through generations to come. They watch as human and Cryaxian children play together in the crystal gardens, their laughter mixing with the musical chimes of the healing flowers, proving that the greatest victories come not from defeating enemies, but from daring to help them.